Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Very happy to be speaking with a volunteer, a coach, the lead dreamer and doer of Global Villages, Denyssa David. Thank you for taking the time, Denyssa. I know one other person who calls themselves a dreamer. They have the dreamer and the pointer. And to me, it kind of works out to be the creative director and the managing director. But when you hear lead dreamer and doer of Global Villages, what is that? And you also give me an overview of Global Villages, right?
So the reason why I call myself a dreamer and a doer is because I think that we generally, and when I say we, I mean Trinidadians, we generally have this pattern of dreaming and talking and planning a lot and activating less than we talk and dream and plan. So I was in that pattern of dreaming a lot and coming up with fantastic ideas and not activating as much as I needed to really effect change. So I gave myself that name in order to propel myself to act more.
I feel as though is every time you say that is almost as though you're kind of holding yourself accountable.
Yes.
What are you doing right now?
Yes. So the most important project, I guess we are focusing right now, is sustainable agriculture in East Port of Spain, 4 schools in East Port of Spain. And so that project, the partnership with the Ministry of Education officially ended, but we are going into the community of St. Bob's to have a community garden.
And when I hear sustainable, I think of what it is you're doing, how it is you're doing it. And I know sometimes people talk about, I don't have the space. Is that something that you're addressing as well?
Yeah, so in East Port of Spain and around East Port of Spain, in some spaces, space is a challenge. In some spaces, managing resources and the utilization of resources is a challenge. And what we teach or what we try to impart on the young people is really, it's a perception of lack of resources. It's a perception of lack of space. So how do you use what you have in your community to be able to move from one space to the other?
And dreaming, doing is also something that you work on with being a volunteer and a coach. TEDx Port of Spain. Why be a part of it?
So in 2011, when I decided I would say to storm the conference, because I hadn't signed up because I was supposed to be in Guyana. One of the things that attracted me to this space was the marrying of liming and intellectual discourse. So I think that TEDx Port of Spain does a fantastic job at marrying those two. That combination, I think, is important for us, is important for me.
And is it a matter of saying, okay, well, it's spurring interest, it's spurring conversation, and it goes a little bit to action as well? Or what is that thing that keeps you around and saying, yes, that intersection of having that fellowship and that social interaction, but also having things to really sink your teeth into on an intellectual level? And this makes sense. Because like you said, some people could just be talking.
Yeah.
But sometimes you want to talk with some sense too, huh?
Yeah.
But that 2011 to 2023, what are some of the things that you've noticed over that time? What are some of those things, and I even say high points?
So I could speak personally. My network has definitely expanded tremendously, and I've formed some bonds, some connections, and even friendships with persons who I now collaborate with on projects. So for example, one of the persons who I coached a few years ago, we are now colleagues and we support young people. We recently returned from Jamaica where we sat down with 15-year-old pregnant girls to have conversations about how they want to be supported. That would not have happened if I had not come to TEDx Port of Spain. So that is a collaboration, that is action that came out of conversation at a conference of TEDx Port of Spain.
And really building those links. What goes into coaching someone?
I would say a combination of kindness and honesty. I say that it is not about dictating, but about guiding. And so from the very beginning, I tell the speakers who I'm coaching that I am not going to tell you what to say on that stage. You know your story, and it's about me supporting you to best craft your talk to deliver your best story, to impact others. Because I always say that we could talk and talk and talk. If someone cannot leave the conference or someone cannot end the viewing of a conversation or the viewing of a talk without knowing, okay, this, and this, these were her or his main points, then they kind of failed. So it's a combination of honesty and kindness, and also impressing upon them that the journey of preparing for a talk is a very personal journey. I think that a lot of people, while they're preparing for their talk, there are a lot of insecurities that emerge. And so I'm there to support in those instances where there's self-doubt, for them to really embrace the full experience of preparing for what we consider the talk of their lives.
Well, in terms of that personal story, our personal journey, was your personal journey from storming in 2011, volunteering, and being a coach? Because I'm sure in 2011 you weren't coaching.
No, I think that Keto Deming, the co-licensee at the time, he felt as though my insistence on ensuring that our content was localized was one of the reasons why he said we need to have her on our team. Because I was very insistent that the language that we use must be our language. We must infuse that into any communication that we have with the public. So it started there, and it went to me assisting with editing. I was called the grammarian, editing and doing some writing, leading the volunteer team, helping with speaker curation, which is deciding, okay, this is our theme this year. Who do we want to be part of the cast? And speaker coaching, supporting the speakers to create their best talks.
And even in that, and let me get into this now. So being able to say, all right, you have a hand in choosing the cast. How do you go about doing that work to decide this is what we need to really lock in on in terms of a theme? So we think this would be the cadre or the cohort that will help to really bring it to the fore.
Well, I have to commend Kita for coming up with a very scientific method, somewhat scientific method. So sometimes we start with a spreadsheet with about 90 persons, and we rate these persons. And one of the things that I was impressed by from the very beginning was insisting that the persons that we chose were either Trinidad and Tobago nationals, or if they were not resident here, that they were grounded here, that they understood our experience, and that they were connected to this space. So that was very important for us in being TEDx Port of Spain.
Do you think it's, they talk about leaders who made and who created. Does that conversation apply for coaches?
In terms of selecting coaches? Or?
In terms of like saying, okay, well, yeah, I want this person to coach the person the speaker doing this TEDx talk. And I asked that question because even when we were getting ready, you were asking questions like, okay, so we're going to use the mic, or we ready? And just kind of, all right, let's go. We're all here. So according to Fela Kuti, let's start what we came into the room to do.
Yes.
And some people would want to say the same thing, but they would use a very different demeanor, different energy, and that might throw someone off the game, especially if you're trying to coax someone towards being their best self.
Yeah, I think that my coaching style is very much reflective of my personal journey. And so I have been on a personal journey to unlearn a lot of the things that we adopted from our colonial experience. And so one of the things is this insisting that you have something perfect, insisting that you cater for someone else instead of being true and telling your story. And so that really informs how I coach our speakers.
All right, and with that, we take a short break. We are speaking with volunteer, coach, person who just in it to win it, Denyssa David, lead dreamer and doer of Global Villages. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking with Denyssa David, volunteer, coach, and I want to get back into some of the things a little outside of TEDx in terms of life skills, entrepreneurship, and problem solving. Just before we took the break, you spoke about unlearning. You know, sometimes emptying your cup to go forward. This leap, take the leap with me, or explain the leap that you took. Thank you.
So you mentioned someone earlier when you saw Dreamer and Doer. And I have to give credit to Rondell Benjamin of the Bois Academy for really being an elder, even though he's not that old, in helping me understand my process of becoming wiser. Before, I used to refer to my process as decolonizing, and now it is more of a recovery. So I think that sometimes we want to dismantle certain systems that we feel we do not fit into well. And for me, it hasn't been so much about dismantling, but about understanding the parts in a system and tweaking the parts that don't work well, repairing those.
And I really like the fact, because sometimes people say revolution means total change, but sometimes revolution can mean full circle.
Yeah.
So is that level of perception of actually realizing what it is we're working with, being able to articulate and seeing what needs to be changed, tweaked, addressed to suit what it is we're doing. And those life skills, the entrepreneurship, problem solving, how do you bring them into play? How do you help to implement? What is that about?
So one of the things that we do with Global Villages and our interaction with young people is we create spaces for them to fail well. We create spaces for them to test things and to problem solve and to be able to troubleshoot all the time without the pressure or the fear of being penalized for it. So we have, when we teach what we call agri-life in St. Barb's, for example, we have young children who are working out a wheelbarrow lost a screw. Okay, we could take this vine and we could push it in temporarily to be able to use our wheelbarrow. So things like that, I think, are important for them to learn to use resources within their space to solve problems, and also to do so without the fear of punishment. I think that is really important. And to allow them to have access to decision making. When we start any session, we always create what we call a community agreement, and we co-create this community agreement. This is not something that I decide on and then I impose it upon them. We come together and we decide this is how we want to exist in this space. And if one of the guidelines, and we call them guidelines and not rules, if one of the guidelines is that we shouldn't be using cell phones while we are in session, it means I can't use a cell phone either. So we are equals in this space, and that is quite counter to the mainstream narrative or the experiences otherwise.
But I think it fundamentally kind of makes sense, because I think we've all had the experience where somebody wants us to do as they say, as opposed to they do, and how that would have made us feel. But sometimes we get big And I don't know if we decide that, okay, well, we're in that club now. So it's a matter of saying, okay, well, I read, so I'm able to now turn and tell somebody else. And they just need to follow my edict without looking at what it is I'm doing, because behavior is caught and not taught plenty times.
Yeah.
But I really like that point that you make of even like failing forward. I know Kwame Ture, he talks about sometimes people think that they may have a grouping, go back down to zero. But, and that perception that you also spoke about, the perception is that is a higher quality zero that you're moving from. So you're able to move forward. But what do you think, though, is the largest lesson that you've learned in this journey of self-discovery, both of yourself and how you're able to bring people out towards the more of a full potential, or should I say fuller potential of themselves?
I think one of the things that I could speak specifically for my interaction with young people in East Port of Spain, one of the things that I realized is that being middle class and formally educated, that going into their communities and leaving safely, that I had no skin in the game. And so when I went to them, I had to be very honest about my position. So now we no longer go into communities and say, we come to help you. We are invited into communities to support, and we are there to support and not to dictate. And I think that is very important, not to take a patriarchal approach to supporting people.
And definitely that's something that and I know MT Masalwazi with the Roots Foundation, that is something that they do as well. We didn't come with all the answers.
Yeah.
And many times if someone doesn't have skin in the game in something that is built in the community, like you're talking about co-creating the community agreement, that's your thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to our thing that we
no
have buying. But if that, what's the one thing that you want people to take away before or after or about TEDx Port of Spain, these speakers, the TED Talks? What would that thing be?
I would say that it's a good marriage of liming and intellectual discourse. And I, like so many others, have forged these relationships with people that I consider lasting. It's since 2011, and some of them I still speak to weekly. So outside of the talks themselves, we also design the experience so that there's interaction with the participants before, during the breaks, and after.
Joanna, thank you so much, Denyssa.
Thank
Just
you, Dike.
sharing some insight, some of what goes on behind the scenes, and why we should all be a part of it.
Yes.
And we want to thank you for being a part of this. This has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.